How's it going, Luke? Yeah, you're on mute still.
All
Hello.
right, there we go.
Hey.
Solve the mute problem, solve the which monitor is it on?
Yeah, yeah, great. I see Peter and Natalie also. Hi, welcome.
Hello, hello.
I'm putting our meeting notes in our chat here too. There we go. Right. So let's see. It looks like there's a few people said that they would be joining, but I guess we can go ahead and get started chit-chatting. How is everybody doing? Good New Year?
I've had a cold and I found out today that there's a thing going around that's not a cold that it could be. Like there's like a flu type thing, but it's not like a terribly severe thing. So usually I'm like I don't have the flu because like I'm not dying. But this one's apparently sort of mellow. So it might be what I have.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know my wife and I usually get our flu vaccines every year just because it helps, but sometimes they get you before you get a chance.
Yeah, no, I got I I get every vaccine that I can possibly get, but it's not always the thing that does it. What's it called? Let me see if one of my open windows here has the name of it. Human meta Human metapneumovirus,
Okay, interesting.
HMPV, which sounds really bad.
Yeah. Well,
But
you make anything clinical, it starts to sound a little scary if it's not familiar. Natalie, I see you have what are those Lego Drupal behind
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I ended up picking that up at the at DrupalCon Portland early
Nice.
last year. My brain is still operating in 2024 somehow. So if I say earlier this year, then
Well, you have at least a month to figure out that the year is 2025 and start actually writing that on things, right?
yep, exactly. Yep, that's been tripping me up the past few days.
Awesome. I see John, you joined. Hi, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, man? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, yeah. Think
Think we had
I'm sorry.
have we met before?
Yeah, yeah. DrupalCon, probably a few times like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool beans. Are you in the Bay Area or where are you located?
I'm actually in British Columbia on Sunshine Coast.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous there. But today I'm actually in Rhode Island because I had to come out here for a family thing.
Okay.
So
Nice.
now I'm on Eastern time.
How about
And
you? You at?
you're in the Bay Area, is that right, John?
Yeah. Close to Luke. Luke, you're in
that's
the Bay
right.
Area, dude. Are you? Still
Yeah, oh
living
yeah,
down
we're like mountain biking distance away from each other.
there? You're in Berkeley or?
No, I'm in Martinez.
Oh, okay. All right. Right on.
That's wonderful. We get to get everybody from all around the West Coast together
Mm,
on one spot.
mm.
Uh, we actually last time we had somebody from Australia dial in just because it was convenient for them.
Hmm.
So yeah, I know we probably have a few more people joining for our main topic, which is Drupal CMS. And we specifically chose that topic last time for this meetup because, well, launch is in a week. But we do also have a launch party. There's a whole lot of those. I certainly would love to see you join us next week. It's not a full meetup. It's just an hour open session. And so I know there's a lot of others throughout the day. So if you can't make it, totally understand. But yeah, just gonna leave it open and give people an opportunity. But um, I think Faye had a kind of a jesting sort of idea to make an attempt to create a demo website for event organizers using Drupal CMS. I thought that was kind of clever.
Oh,
That'd be
uh,
nice, but I don't know if we could pull that off in a week. Let's see. I think I'm just double checking. Just another point of order. If anybody's new here, we do record these, and I posted a document in our chat here. This is just a place for us to collect, you know, not only the agenda, but also a link to the recording for anybody that can't make it or joins late. If we come up with any next actions, like here's stuff that we'd like to do for our community or our meetups, we'll put notes there. And any other sort of like resources that we might have, like if there's thoughtful links for, you know, whatever we're talking about. So with that in mind, I might actually pull up a link for Drupal CMS and put that in the additional resources since that's our conversation. And that's actually been the hardest thing. It's the name, Drupal CMS, that's so generic and ambiguous.
yeah.
It seems to be confusing a lot of people.
Yeah. I get the logic behind it because I feel like I remember there was an explanation of like, oh, we did like a focus group or something, and it turned out that that was what won out, but I feel like it's gonna make, I don't know, searching documentation online interesting for some folks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it really will, especially in I do a lot of sales proposals, so it gets super confusing there. It's like, of course you're using Drupal CMS. What else would you? Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're on a razor's edge as far as I'm concerned in terms of delivery, idea, execution. So, I'm a business guy. I only I only see Drupal from business. I don't see
Yeah.
Drupal from,
From a
you know,
marketing perspective, it gets a little challenging, I guess.
I don't know why yeah, someday I'd love to have the conversation around where that name actually, you know, came from.
Yeah, I think Natalie, you were saying it was a focus group that they did.
I don't know. I feel like I remember just scouring some issue queue or maybe something in Slack. I don't remember now, but that was at least what I read somewhere. I'll try to find where I read it and see if I can share it with everyone.
Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
we'll put it in the notes.
I was part of a marketing committee when we were like wrestling with different ideas, and that was one of the ones that came up, and I remember thinking like that's not going to be it,
Yeah.
and 2 weeks later it came down that was it, and don't I don't know.
Hi,
Yeah.
Mike. Yeah, that's
Averaging.
I think very on brand though for the Drupal community. This very generic name.
I
Like
guess.
I said,
What's the difference between Drupal and Drupal CMS? It's always been Drupal CMS.
Yeah, I think they're kind of
yeah, yeah,
like Drupal is a general concept, Drupal core, and then Drupal CMS. Speaking of, they launched a new website which happens to have the subdomain new dot, which is really hilarious.
What do you mean? So what's the domain? What's the name?
A while ago, I'm sure you recall, I think it was DrupalCon Portland, maybe before then they talked about doing some new branding
Hmm.
for Drupal, which is pretty common. Well, they finally implemented that. Here, I'll pull it up on screen for posterity. But there we go. So, so you can see the branding's there. Love it, hate it. That's what it is. But
Oh,
the
no idea.
domain name is new.drupal.org.
That's good.
I guess we're sticking with Drupal 9 logo
I,
forever now.
well, that was the perpetual logo after the DrupalCon. So if you look at the Drupal branding, which I recently did to make the logo for our group here, um, there's actually a few varieties of that logo that they have. If I can find a link, I'll pull that up. But it was kind of interesting. Let's see. Actually, I can probably pull that up. I recently pulled it up. Drupal brand, maybe brand guidelines.
Hmm.
Maybe brand logo, something like that. We'll probably pull it up. Yeah, I think it was somewhere under here. There was like this whole breakout. So the standalone drop, and then you can put a version beside it. But they also had these other things with the usage of the
Uh,
forget where they went. But yeah, there it is. It's all the way over here. These brand guidelines, I think, was a dedicated page that kind of broke out like all the color schemes, things like
okay.
that. So you can see some of the updated things that they recently did. If I'm scrolling too fast and it's making anybody disoriented, let me know. Maybe I can do the classic use the spacebar thing. Yeah, so you incorporate the drop. This was an interesting twist to the community drop versus the individual drop. So seeing like how people kind of break into things in terms of like why are you putting that into the logo design? So that's part of the reason why I chose that as the logo to use in this is it felt like it kind of captured that whole community idea. But they did have some of these other ideas about how to incorporate other labels. Like here you can see Drupal CMS, but they also have a couple of things I seem to recall. I think it might be towards the end. Textures. There it is. I just flew right past it. Like some of these sub brandings sort of thing. So you have like a second line. I thought about doing that for our group, but I'm like, that's just too much. So anyway, a little deviant thing. Back to our main thing. I saw that Eric, you joined. Hey, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good. You got your lights all the way around your desk. I thought it was only in your computer.
Yeah, I like lights. They only come on at night though.
Well, cool. I think we're getting close to time to talk about our main topic. But before we do, obviously we have a few new faces here. Maybe we can go around and I'm just going to read from the top of the list. So if you could just maybe do a quick introduction, say like what it is that you do, maybe who you work for, and really anything that you want to do. It's our community. You can say what you want. Maybe I can go with order of who joined in. If you don't want to say who you are or anything like that, you can completely skip over that. Just ignore me, and we'll have a nice awkward 6 seconds of silence, and then we'll move on to the next person. So, Peter, you had joined in first. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I would love to. So my name is Peter Rubin. I'm a CS student, and I'm into web development in Drupal. I've been to Drupal Camp 2024 recently, and I'm also on Drupal Slack. And I'm into Drupal and also writing various tests.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Peter. All right. I think Natalie, you had joined after Peter. So,
Hi, yeah. I am Natalie. I'm actually based out in New York State. And I am a Drupal web developer. I was previously a technical architect at Acquia, but just having a bit of a break now, and going to be getting involved with the Blue Fly Collective soon. So very happy to be here.
right on. Nice to see you, Natalie, on the call. And I think Luke, you joined after Natalie. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Luke McCormick, Martinez near San Francisco, Cell Ear on various platforms, including my phone number. Little known fact. Uh,
Got a vanity number.
yeah. Well, I had the phone number first, and I set my Drupal.org ID based on my already existing uh, mnemonic. And then I own Cellier.com and all the different things. So it's kind of a waiting brand in a sense. That used all my time. So let's go to the next one.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Well, nice seeing you here, Luke. John, you joined after Luke. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm John Faber. I run Chapter 3 here in San Francisco. Been in the Drupal community for 20 years. Been at chapter 3 for 15 years. That's about all I can say about my Drupal stuff.
Just
Dated myself twice.
just a small little detail, right? Well,
We're
nice
also the
having you.
authors of the nextdrupal.org project. I don't know if any of you have seen that, but that's our push to decouple the front end of Drupal.
Oh, wonderful. That sounds like it's long overdue. All right. Mike, I think you were in after John. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, Mike McCaffrey, working at Kalamata now for, I guess, 5 or 6 years. Uh, Architect, building sites with the Drupals, um, mostly front end stuff. I love Twig and hate everything else basically about, modern Drupal.
Love Twig. Can I get you
Yeah.
get a quote on that, Mike? I'm gonna get you offline there, Mike
I mean,
McCaffrey.
sure. Yeah. I mean, we're also building a new version of Cal Static, which is our static site generator. That it's basically going to be just Twig. It's like Twig JS and just a couple little helper functions, but mostly it's an entire static site generator just with Twig doing everything.
Fun.
That's pretty impressive stuff. Well, nice to have you here, Mike. I think Eric, you joined after Mike. Do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Eric Wheeler. I think I have some weird filter on because I look great more than usual, but I don't understand how the video stuff works. I am in Washington State in Vancouver, South Vancouver, and I work for Stanford remotely, probably for almost half my life, it feels like at this point, doing all kinds of web things and other things. I'm primarily Drupal, I suppose. Oh, I don't know what this year holds, but I've been doing a lot of like back-end application stuff, not using Drupal. Um, but this year I'm going to use Drupal more. And Natalie, nice to meet you in face-to-face finally. And Luke, I'm originally from Concord, California, so
I'm there on a daily basis.
yeah, I used to hang out in Martinez all the time.
Yeah.
Good food in Concord.
And I think John, you had a post about just non-Drupal things as well. So I think along with what Eric's saying, it is good to diversify, especially in technology. Drupal touches a lot of things, and I think, especially from an agency perspective, having a pretty deep set of knowledge is good. I saw Ryan joined. Ryan, did you want to introduce yourself to folks that might not know you?
Sure. I just got back in from walking my dog, but I am Ryan Price. I've been doing Drupal very, very long time, Drupal 4.6. And yeah, these days, right now, I do literally full stack. Like I configure the servers, I write the CSS code and the Twig, lots of embedding Twig files in other files. So I appreciate it on that level, the like portability of it all between 30 different websites for US government. Oh, and at DrupalCon Atlanta, my friend Mashaya and I, who I met through Drupal Meetup, we're building a video game where you can virtually go through DrupalCon as an attendee. It's going to be really weird.
Oh,
I can't say a lot about it other than it's going to be really weird because it's still kind of hatching as we speak, but it's coming.
Oh,
You
that
have to wear
And we're going to
VR.
have a talk.
that's great.
That
We're
sounds
going to have a talk
really
at DrupalCon. We're
cool.
going to show it off. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It'll
kind of like
raise the numbers of attendees.
yeah, I think that would be great for attendees. It's kind of like JD Flynn's presentation at the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit. He built a video game specifically for his presentation, which was really cool. Well, awesome. So for anybody new here, We started this group mostly because we wanted to make sure that there's a meetup that's accessible to people who, are busy, have families, don't want to commute, might not be able to commute to a physical geographic meetup. And also, I think it gives us an opportunity to not only have something scheduled specific to a time zone, but as we've seen, there are folks that come from other time zones as well, because it's a virtual meetup. So all are welcome. It's specifically geared towards Pacific, but if other folks in other time zones want to do the same thing, they're certainly welcome to. And I think that makes this community stronger. With that in mind, I do want to make sure that anything that we're doing in this is up to snuff with the code of conduct and held accountable. So we do record these for that reason. If anything happens that you don't like, let me know. I want to make sure that these are welcoming and inviting spaces. But more importantly, I want you to get credit for participating. So everyone that's on here, I want to make sure that I get your Drupal.org username, so I give you credit for attending these meetups. If I can't find it on my own, of course. So if you could, there is a Slack channel if you're not already in it, the Pacific Time Virtual Drupal Users group. So if you haven't found that in the Drupal Slack, it's there. It's a mouthful. So anyway, our main topic today, as we already said, is Drupal CMS. We'll pick another one for next month. These meetups typically happen the first Wednesday of every month because it's just easier to schedule that way. This one's the second Wednesday because, well, the first one was a holiday. So thank you for joining. What's Drupal CMS to you? Has anybody worked with it? Has anybody spun up an instance of it? What are your thoughts of it? Are you ready for the party in a week?
I've been following it pretty closely in various ways. I mean, I actually I've spun it up in various contexts to play with it. I tried to convert um my project site, simplifydrupal.com, to it, and I ran into I was sort of surprised at the issues. Like I don't know exactly what it is, but I was able to update the project to D11, no problem. But then there's pieces that aren't working there. So without really trying, it's not like I want to try to debug that here, but it's more like the how to approach the debugging. How do you find out actually? How do you find out the answer to that question? How do you find the answer questions to like what it is? I mean, there's very much like the blind men with the elephant thing of like, well, I can tell you lots of things that are in it, but I don't have a sense for whether you know whether that's all of it or just like a slice of it or that kind of thing.
Well, I think the pitch that we saw in the Dries note really did capture the spirit of what Drupal CMS was about. It was just for posterity. It was originally codenamed and still codenamed Starshot.
Starshot. Yeah.
And the idea behind that was similar to JFK's idea of going to the moon. This is Drupal saying, hey, we want to be competitive in our space. So how are we not currently competitive in our space? So there's obvious things that stand out, like modern layout editors, modern uh, other tools like block editors, things like that, but also automatic updates. I think recipes is kind of incorporating into the idea of Drupal CMS, but not all of it's coming at the same time. So that was an interesting thing, very on brand, if you ask me, in terms of like Drupal release schedule sort of concept is this first version may not have all the bells and whistles that the project was focused on, but it's incorporating a lot of those things. So out of the box, I don't know if they're going to have the full, it's built on Layout Builder, but
Yeah.
sending it, calling
Well,
it
I mean
experience.
that's kind of point that's the elephant blind man thing. Like all those pieces I knew about, and what I'm really in kind of search for is the canonical list of what it might be. Like it doesn't have to be delivered. I'm willing to know the backlog, and I'm in touch a little bit with Pam Barone and other people like that. So it's I wonder if I'm just missing it. Like, is it obviously out there? Like, I mean, recipes is obviously a core piece. project browser is a core piece. AI is talked about a lot, but I'm still not like quite sure if that's just, you know, a marketing angle or if that's actually an intrinsic thing. Like could you take that out and it would still be, you know?
Well,
Trying to figure out.
it's the pessimistic view is that this was just Drees's bypassing of the entire community to do whatever he wants because he was like, we're going to do Starshot. Don't worry, it's entirely separate from Drupal. You guys continue working on Drupal. We're going to be over here on Starshot. And then, okay, Starshot's done. It's going to be Drupal. And like, so none of the people who were, in charge of the original core community and like everyone else just ran in, I got to be part of Starshot. So it's kind of like a land grab for influence for new people to, rest the direction of the project away from other people.
Interesting.
I guess my biggest issue that I have with the project, and I was in Barcelona to watch the Dries Note there, where he showed some features. And I've been in the community for a long time. I know Drupal inside and out, right? So I know every feature of Drupal. I know every module, not every module, but And I guess I was just like, where's the innovation here? Like,
what are you talking about? There's AI.
The AI part is cool, but that works with every Drupal site. That's not specific to Starshot, right? So, I guess that's my hang up right now. Like, I don't see it being super innovative. Like, nobody gives a shit about events. Right? That's where I'm having the disconnect. Like, how am I supposed to sell this? And I talked to Tim about it in Barcelona, the DA guy, and their concept
Good learning.
is,
Yeah.
what was that? Yeah. Their concept is to be able to create Drupal into something where like you could spin up tons of sites, like they had I don't know, I guess it was Barcelona. They had Mary the marketer, you know what I mean? And she can't get anything done in her division and and so Mary the marketer goes to this place where she can fire up a Starshot site and she's got it all together and she shows it to her boss and her boss is like, well, there's Drupal developers who don't like this, and Mary the marketer says, no, there's this new thing where I did this all myself. So that was the pitch in Barcelona.
A surprisingly sexist pitch, I thought.
I guess I didn't really see it that. Yeah, you're right. I guess you're right. I didn't really see it like that, but
So
you're
simple,
right.
even a woman can do it.
She was like, I'm just a girl, and even I made a website.
Mary the marketer. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, oh my gosh. Like I've seen 20 years of Dries notes. You know what I mean? And here we are in this extrapolation of trying to make Drupal into Wix.
Yeah.
Well, no, like, I mean, the part that drives me crazy is a lot of this stuff is also stuff that like either Drupal used to do or like, Backdrop figured out like immediately after forking. And like, automatic updates. Yeah, Drupal used to manage its own packages before we did Composer. Like that's something that it used to do. You used to have this. It's not like, and now they're realizing that, oh, maybe by moving to Composer and requiring everyone to have a friggin' engineering degree isn't accessible to marry the marketer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the bigger issue from my seat, what I see out there, and I went to Web Summit later on in the year in Lisbon and talked to people in Lisbon about this. And, everybody I talked to in Lisbon was like, Drupal's still around. Or, wow, yeah, I had this Drupal project. It blew up in my face, right? It's a perception thing in the market right now that Drupal is hard, developer-focused CMS, where other CMSs are seen as more user-friendly, right? Even WordPress is seen as more user-friendly. That's the perception. Whether it's true or not is not really, that doesn't matter because perception is 9/10 of the law. Right?
John, can you throw out the name of one or two of those alternate CMSs that they're comparing to?
What do you
Besides
mean?
WordPress? But are we talking about like Sitecore? Are we talking about
we
like
were
Joomla?
talking completely decoupled, and the decoupled conversation gets derailed quickly, right? Because there's not a lot of really great open source decoupled projects out there, right? Drupal happens to be one of the top ones out there, but people don't know this, right? So I think that Starshop is an attempt to redirect the perception of Drupal not the reality of Drupal. Because you're never going to make it into Wix. It's not going to work. I'll bet everybody $50 right now that we can come back in 12 months and Layout Builder will not be done. Right? Layout Builder's been on deck for 6 years.
I think the
They call
target,
it Experience Builder now to get rid of the perception that Layout Builder's been on deck for 6 years. See, this is why I'm very confused why they chose Drupal CMS, because the issue that they're trying to solve is not Drupal, it's the perception of Drupal. They want Drupal to seem easy, right? And that's what
maybe
they're
someone
fighting. They're
shouldn't
fighting
have.
like this uphill battle, like this is easy, it's going to be easy. And so they should have made it Starshot CMS, the easiest AI-powered CMS on the internet.
That would have been
Right?
brilliant.
Yeah.
Just through marketing, they can change the perception by selling the feature set of Drupal. I have told Dries this, and I have told every person at the DA this for years. But for some reason, they get locked back into like, oh, let's get a group of like super hardcore old school Drupal developers to make a decision. The decision's always going to be like very flat because they don't want to piss anybody off. They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, all this stuff. I get it. It makes a lot of sense, right? But like from my mind, I would have called it something else. I would have worked very hard to change the perception of Drupal and just keep all the features of Drupal exactly the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And
I mean, the
Starshot's
perception.
trying to do that. That's their attempt right now, I feel like.
The perception of Drupal is that because that's what Dries has been going up there and friggin' saying every friggin' year. Enterprise level, enterprise level. He just
Let's
would
not
not
talk
shut up
about that,
about
Mike.
enterprise
Mike,
level.
that's irrelevant.
And like, and like, Mary the marketer is like, oh, I don't need an enterprise level site. I just need a little site. And it's like, so we've been
The other
saying this
thing
for
is that
years.
40% of all Drupal sites were still, or 60% of all Drupal sites were still Drupal 7 sites. Where do you think those 60% of those sites live? They live in government, and they live in EDU, and they live in healthcare and enterprise organizations like that. And right now, like the government, Acquia's main customer, is like being approached by 5,000 vendors a day who are like, dude, what is this system you are running here? Check out this new stuff. Check out this new way. Check out the new platform, right? So they're under a lot of pressure to keep their customers and keep Drupal relevant in those environments where there's a huge amount of money being made inside Drupal, right? So they're like, hey, community, fix all this for us. I didn't like that.
I felt like it went a little bit in the opposite direction in that I mean for the last like 4 or 5 years the Dries notes have been all about site builder like that one like keeps coming up again and again. He talks about like his dad's friends or his barber and things like that are losing their sight. So he's definitely been feeling kind of personally. I think Dries feels personally responsible to some extent for Drupal abandoning the little people and going for the huge corporate stuff. And I'm surprised that my guess, by the way, I was saying like I'm not quite sure what it is, but sort of what I without really feeling confident, what I would think it is kind of like Wix and Drupal, like trying to come up with the closest thing to Wix or Squarespace that you can that's based on Drupal technologies. That's kind of what I felt like the
Goal.
attempt was.
That's the goal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the idea, and here's the product. And right now we're in sort of like the beginning of what's known as the dark trough of execution, and we'll see what happens.
well, I think,
Well,
I think,
if I could throw the optimistic half of this,
Yes,
if you
please.
look at how often does I'm not disagreeing with anybody. I'm just saying like if you look at it from completely the other side, if you look at how fast does Drupal core come out, it's about once every 6 months. But if you could say the same number of new features that we add every time we add to Drupal core, we could do once every 6 weeks or once every 12 weeks instead of having to wait 6 months for the next release cycle. And every time you do one of those releases, it breaks a bunch of your modules because people are deprecating things and whatever. But if you just say, we're just going to put this layer on top of Drupal and the self-service evaluation experience, right, which is something that Wix does really well or something that WordPress does really well, is like somebody told me about Drupal. I want to try it out for myself. Right now, there is no way to try out Drupal for yourself. It's a terrible, terrible experience.
Oh, come
You
on. You
know,
can use
if
Jeff
you know,
Geerling's Raspi setup.
well, the people on this call don't have this problem, right? The people on this call don't have this problem, but the quote, Mary the Marketers people do have this problem of like, how can I test this out? How can I have the Wix experience, but that's corporate friendly, right? If my corporation says or my government says I can only use one of the pieces of software that's approved on this list, right? And where I work in the government, we do have that very, very much of like, if it's not on this list, you're not using it. So a lot of those vendors John's talking about they're trying to get on the approved list. They have to set their servers up in a certain way. They have to do all these crazy things in order to make it work inside the corporation. So if there's a way to take something that's already been on the approved list since 2013, 2011, when did Drupal come out? 2011, right? Since 2011, it's been on the approved list. I can now use Drupal, but it's got all these modern features. It has a layout builder. It has, maybe you won't have AI if you're inside the corporation, but it has, you know, a couple of things that just make it easy to use out of the box. And I don't necessarily need to call my developer every time I want to update something because my development team has to support 30 sites. And while it sounds like, oh, yeah, I have a team of like 10 people that support 30 sites, they spend 60% of their time in meetings. They don't have time to actually fix your stuff because they're always talking about the stuff that they can't fix. Anyway, that's
those are super valid points, Ryan. I appreciate you sharing that. That's I mean, I get that. That makes sense.
That's the addressing the blind spots that I think we've all seen in the community in the market for Drupal for a good number of years. I think we've all collectively made attempts to create things like distributions, install profiles, and recipes as I think yet another iteration of that concept of what repetitive thing am I constantly doing, so that way we can come to market with a concept site a lot faster. So I can see the value in the concepts, but I think John and Mike, you've made some pretty valid points here about it. It needs to be about the execution. And Dries did acknowledge that. You know, this is a very ambitious thing. That's part of the namesake of the project is it's extremely ambitious, but it's one of those either we thrive or we die in this marketplace. So how do we do that? I think this is that exactly that thing, the star shot. This is we have to do this if we're going to survive.
Drupal desperation.
Yeah, I mean to an extent, yeah. But
I want to say,
if you
thanks,
think
Mike.
of any technology that's this old, I mean, the only reason anything's running Fortran or COBOL is because nobody wants to upgrade that one system because they don't have the funding for it.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of things are sitting on Drupal 7 or older right now because they don't have the funding to change that. So you hire someone like,
Chapter 3.
yeah, there you go.
No, but there's a lot of that. I mean the number of PHP sites is dwarfed by the number of Java sites out there, and that's going back 30 years
Yeah.
for when those things were put together, and that's still. I mean,
But
I
you're
mean,
not
once it
selling a
gets
Java site today.
Selling solar, and
oh,
that's pretty bad.
I you know.
Come on, Mike. Figure it out.
Accenture sells $100 million worth of Java sites ever. I mean, that's Adobe is a Java system, right? Like AEM
I don't
isn't
know if
Java.
Accenture is the right.
You know,
I,
chapter 3
I,
just
I
has
used
a
to,
completely different idea about how to approach Drupal, and that's the road. That's the road we're gonna hoe. You know what I mean? Because unless we get new developers into Drupal, new people who come from other communities who are doing other things, who begin to see the value in the piece that Drupal plays in the digital puzzle, I think it's going to be hard to break out of the little myopic shell that we're in. And that's kind of my concern. With Starshot, I just don't know if it's going to be, it might be attractive maybe on a product level, but like I can't even wrap my head around selling it, right? Like they don't want developers. It's like you don't need a developer. So like, what am I? So that's a different story. But you know, what were you going to say, Ryan?
I gotta say though, the number of people I hang out on a lot of like message boards and social
Yeah,
media sites where people are talking about Drupal. The number of people that I've seen like, oh, I'm picking up Drupal again for the first time since like 2016,
yeah, I
or
agree.
I've been on WordPress for 5 years, but I'm coming back to Drupal now. And I think that this Starshot thing, I mean, the whole Matt Mullenweg doesn't want to pay people or whatever thing that they did scandal didn't help WordPress any, but I think people were already thinking that way before that scandal. But I've seen a lot of people recently go, yeah, I'm thinking about Drupal again. And I don't
No,
think
I
it's
agree.
just
That,
because
that's
of
I've seen
this
that
effort,
too.
but it's a
I've seen
trend.
that
It's
too.
happening.
I feel like that was the WordPress thing. People got pretty spooked by that, man. Like that's bad stuff. You know what I mean?
Well,
Plus,
Yeah.
WordPress has gone on to the crazy janky route, with things like Gutenberg and all this crazy shit that they're doing. I think, Drupal stays true to its core of a clean set of code, right? So, yeah.
I think um I guess one of the questions I have is we're all kind of a little bit in our bubble. And if you guys had to slap together a website for why don't we call it a mid-sized business, what product would you actually use? Would you use Drupal for that?
We
Um
would.
and we like all of our pitch decks are all geared to that already. So, but is that really the best solution for the problem that you're coming after?
The
Um,
the the, the street likes to say Webflow.
Well, you know,
That's like what the San
Drupal is an amazing
Francisco.
product for the right problem. I mean, it
yeah.
really, really is. It's a
Oh, you don't
great.
got to sell me. I
I
like
know, right? So
I
like
drank the
it depends
Kool-Aid.
on what the business wants. So like at chapter 3, we love decoupled sites, right? We've invested a ton of money
Yeah.
in decoupled. We love decoupled, blah, 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 right? But like when it comes right down to it, we still build mostly just Drupal sites.
I like a Drupal backend just because it deals with a lot of those kinds of problems. But is that how, like, in a lot of cases, it's sort of like killing a fly with a sledgehammer, right?
No, it depends. I mean, it
I
depends
mean,
on
of
your
course it
development
depends.
skill
Getting it
level. You know
depends.
what I mean? Like if you're a good developer, it's really not, right? You can build a system that's pretty bulletproof with paragraphs. So in terms of like flex out layability and stuff like that. So, but
That's
you're
what I
right.
do
I
every
mean,
day.
for the small sites, it's probably maybe not the best solution. I don't know.
And I think this goes back to Drupal's roots too. It started off as a blogging platform essentially with some promise to be a bit more, and it kept growing and growing, and now we have what we have, and now it's become the enterprise solution that a lot of people invested in. But then we lost a lot of people. Backdrop CMS is this good example of how we lost those people. And you also have a lot of people who work in the WordPress space that are, for lack of a better label, script kiddies, people who just find the recipe to do the thing and move on to the next thing. And from a solution standpoint, you've got folks who, yes, they work at the enterprise level. You have a great degree of complexity, but that small and medium-sized business, or even the hobby site, you kind of lost a lot of those interests when you jumped over to Drupal 8. And we knew it. We knew it at the time that's what was happening when we went more object oriented. We would be losing folks. But this shift to no code, the promise behind that, I think, is a valid one. John, back to your point, it all comes down to the execution. So we'll see.
We're in a scary space, man, because like, when I was in Lisbon at Web Summit, I was at the keynote, one of the keynotes there that talked all about business and, I'm in business, right? So it's of extreme interest to me because business has been very slow for many Drupal shops and many development shops for the last 18 months. Many people in our industry are being laid off and there are no jobs to be hired back into, right? And so I was like, man, I was getting paranoid. I was like, fuck, this has just got to be chapter 3. We suck, oh man, what's going on? No, it's industry wide. And they're saying, so we went to Lisbon because we're rolling out a product called Next CMS, right? And so we went there to get some information from people. We were like, hey, we're just pitching, to see what people would say to us about this idea, right? That's why we were really there. And the guy was like, this guy was like, listen, the cottage industry of software development is over. He said within 5 years, a team that took like 10, 15, 20 developers going to be replaced by 3, right?
That's true.
And that's the scary shit that's really happening out there. Low code, no code. Low code, no code means no jobs for us.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Here,
Like,
build a system to put yourself out of business. But it's where it's all going anyway, right? Like it's not unique to us.
but we do that every
I would,
friggin' day. It's open source. We put ourselves out of work every day. We implement something, we release it to the community, we never have to write it again. So
But
it's
there's
like,
an
you know,
industry expert. There's an industry expert, and like an industry expert that's involved with all of those decisions, and even those, the ability to take opportunities that other people have given and implement them themselves. That was the creative around open source. But like AI could remove all of that. You don't need that.
I,
Like people
I
are there
will,
are like
I
they don't
will,
give a shit about developers. They just want the code to work.
yeah.
Where we have a different philosophy, right? We're like, we're developers, man. We love our code. It's got to be beautiful. It's got to be bug free. This, optimize that. AI's like, screw it. Just make it work. Oh, there's a bug. Zip, fix it. How'd you fix it? Don't worry about it.
yeah,
Is it-
It works.
that doesn't happen. Like, you know,
Not yet.
all no all
AI's only been
this
out for 2 years.
all the studies are saying that AI is helping people produce a lot of code, but it's not like lowering the amount of bugs at all. And in fact, it's creating more like architectural issues because you're
Feedback.
cramming more and more code into it, and it's just like, oh, let's
Perhaps
just add more code, you know.
right
And
now.
we already have enough Drupal. We
I'm,
don't need AI to make
So
more.
this
I'm kind of with
this
John
is
on
a
this just
cyclical
because
thing,
it's a
though.
force multiplier, right? It takes one developer to be 4 developers.
And
And
again, open source software, we do it every day. We've been doing it every
Well,
day.
it's already
We don't.
happening in places like marketing departments, content strategy teams, content analysis teams. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but like a lot of high-end strategists got laid off last year.
yeah, I don't think
Why? We
developers are
needed
going
crap.
away, but I think that it's the market is going to dramatically level itself out.
Well, it's
Well, here's the thing: is
the adapt or die type of philosophy. And I think, well, I want to kind of capture a lot of what everyone's saying here. Open source is something that allowed us to share our ideas. I solved a problem, other people can improve on this solution. So that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. There's an efficiency to that. And does that mean that you aren't hiring 3 developers to do the same task 3 times every time? I mean, if I'm a business owner, I would want to make sure that I'm not investing more than I should. I have a responsibility to do that. So if that means that I hire fewer people or I find a cheaper solution, that's the correct strategy for me. And if our
Unfortunately,
market can't provide those sort of opportunities, then they're going to be found elsewhere. Now, I say that as someone who is always looking for work. I mean, that is the eternal struggle, I think, for a lot of us, but it's the parable, who moved my cheese? If you can't adapt to change, then it will swallow you whole and you'll just be sitting there wondering where your food went. So I think, all of us are hypersensitive to what's happening in the technology industry as a whole right now. I think all of you have put forth some really valid points here. And trust me, I really glom to the pessimism sort of view because that's where the suffering exists. But I think we also are very clever people. We need to come to the table with solutions, whether it's
Speak for
Drupal.
yourself.
You can
I
retire on the beach all you want, Nick.
well, I mean, there's good news and bad news, right? Like the good news is that like technology, like pretty much the definition of technology is it makes doing things easier.
Yeah.
Like from the beginning, the wheel makes it easier to move like uh, large amounts of stuff one place to another. Even going more recently than that, like word processors. I'm old enough that I was in offices that used to have typists. And then, 5 years after that, there were no typists. And, what used to be like, 20 or 30 people in every office that just did nothing but type had been replaced by technology. And
Later.
what happens when things go well is that when it gets easier to do the old stuff, you don't just have fewer people doing that same stuff. you have fewer people doing that old stuff, but then the remaining people are doing more things and new things, and it's weird because we don't know what the fuck they are. We don't know what that things that we're not doing now that we're going to be able to do in the next few years.
The
That's the
car
stuff that gets
replaces the
invented.
In
horse.
in the
Yeah,
year 1993, there was no person in the world who had a job description of webmaster. And then 2 years later, it was
except for
thousands and
me,
thousands of
I did.
people.
But yeah,
I
there
might
weren't a
be I
lot
might
of
be off of
us.
my year by a little bit, but 1989 for sure, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So to sort of roll back to what I was saying about AI and stuff, yeah, whatever, it's coming. At Web Summit this year, there were 2,000 startups there, 500, whatever it is, 500 startups a day, right? And we investigated every single one of them. 97% of them were all AI ideas, right? Everyone's mining this AI idea. In
And no one's
Barcelona,
making money.
Dries did say one thing that I really locked onto, and I'm going to continue to lock onto that. Drupal does have an opportunity to become the first open source AI powered CMS, right? Where there's stuff inside Drupal that the community has built to optimize the editorial experience, the SEO experience, the taxonomy experience, the construction experience, right? That's completely separate from Starshot. That has nothing to do with Starshot. You could implement that on your Drupal site now, right? So I
If you
love
have
that.
one.
Say what?
If you have one.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
the,
think
the, the
it's
thing
I
about
think
stars.
that's a really, really great direction that Dries did mention, and I'm super interested to see where he goes with this in Atlanta, right? Because he will do this Starshot release party, and the Starshot release party is going to be a little bit of a gas, right? I mean, it's like here's some recipe, blah, right? He might come up, and what I'm hoping for is that the people in the AI side of the Drupal world of things, have done some miraculous shit, especially the SEO thing. And if we can say we're an AI powered open source CMS where you have the pathway to create your own LLM for your own content and then sell your content into new LLMs via API, all open source. So open source, open web, open data. I love all of that shit, man. That makes me really happy. And he did
And then
make
dead
a point
internet
of
theory.
saying Drupal is the first open source AI powered CMS. So he captured that tagline, which I thought was very cool.
And John,
So I'm not all negative Nelly. There's certain things in there that I like.
I think you're spot on though about this being largely optics, and I think they can coexist though.
I do.
I
We'll
think it
see.
can be optics, and I think that it can also be a just improvement to our big bubble of a solution. But I think the pitch that Drupal is a more complex CMS that's open source that helps handle structured data, and then you add on to it automations that really reduce the amount of workload of managing content, especially large amounts of content. That's your value proposition for Drupal as a solution. I mean, all the nuances that are particular to a specific project or client, of course, start to talk you in or out of that solution. But I think these are those towards moves. Like if you don't say AI, whether that's optics or actual solution that helps marry marketer, I think there's some legitimacy to what you were saying before about, and we've been talking about this for some time now. Like SEO is a very well understood space. Accessibility is a very well understood space. These are things that AI can really help us with. But I think we also talked a little bit about this idea of it's a quality thing. So when it comes to best practices, hard rule sets like accessibility, those can get you a good bit of the way there. But after a while, you get kind of the Ouroboros sort of snake eating itself feedback loop of AI kind of feeding on other bad produced AI stuff, and the quality of things starts to potentially degrade. I think there's that risk that we need to be kind of hypersensitive to.
And then the internet is just AI tools marketing to other AI tools.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
where it's going.
Yeah.
I mean, that is where it's going, right? I mean, nobody likes to write anymore, so that's
Is
where it's
this the
all.
Razor's basilisk type of problem?
Yeah, pretty much.
I saw a pretty cool thing in Lisbon that these dudes were marketing, which was like this little box that stood that was on your desk. It was like a little desktop server They did a really good job of making an aluminum enclosure and shit like that. And it was your own private LLM just for you. Kind of cool. That's a cool idea. Like that's a super cool idea. I love that idea. Right. So I think that if we keep talking AI and stuff like that and say, oh, AI helps configure Starshot or Drupal CMS or whatever, that's a really strong direction, right? And they need to do that because, like this year, if they keep going down the road of Starshot, we'll see what happens with sales. It clamped sales last year, clamped it. And
I,
people here know that because people have lost jobs or whatever, right? Sales have dried up, and there's a reason.
and the
And
lead
if
times are.
Drupal continues down the lamp stack, which I call the dad stack, I don't know, man. But AI could rejuvenate the clients that we have. Like we're going to come out chapter 3's. I've got my boys working on some pretty cool AI stuff right now that we'll release, but it will probably work with a decoupled front end. Like I put in the chat, I put one of our clients in there. You can check them out. These guys were going to move off Drupal entirely. And I was like, fuck, no. And I talked them out of it, and they moved to Next Drupal. So that's a fully decoupled Drupal site that we migrated out of Drupal 7, saved them on the Drupal platform, right? And it works perfectly. And
Well,
National Association of Realtors, I'm not sure if you know who they are, but they're like the largest trade organization in America. I didn't know when I signed them up how big they were, but they're huge.
I saw the logo.
And the traffic on that thing is obscene, right? Every time you look at it, there's 2,000 real estate agents logged in, checking shit out on their whatever
Wow.
their my account, right? But since it's all Next.js, you don't notice any of that. Like we don't even touch Drupal for auth, right? We use NextAuth and their SSO system, right? Got a lot of people pretty interested. They're like, so what are and it's 25 editors. We didn't have to retrain them because we rebuilt their Drupal 7 interface for them, right? And now we can begin to sell them cool new AI tools that exist inside Drupal and use them as the case study, right? So
So I've
I think there's a
kind of
lot of
a
potential, man, but
I've
sales got to
kind of
improve. Otherwise, everyone's going to lose their job.
I have a twist question for everyone, really. What would you like to see Drupal CMS be? Like if you had the magic wand and in 6 to 12 months, Drupal CMS has one feature or one feature set, what does that look like? How does that help our community and our sales?
For me, it is exactly the thing that John's talking about, is that there's this easy to use, quote unquote, like interface that plays nicely with your, corporate policies and everything like that, but that has this sort of power tool feature set built on top of it. Like, in not very long, you'll be able to do something really basic like build an events page without thinking about it. But building the events page that is catered to your specific needs and works inside of the problem that you're trying to solve is when you're going to need to hire an expert. And I think that's going to be the difference, is like, it's so easy to do the easy stuff. We need to do the hard stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
you could do this on WordPress. If you want to do this on WordPress, hire your nephew. Your nephew will do it, and your nephew will mess it up and your sales will go down. Hire the experts, and the experts will, carefully consider what you need. We'll go talk to your users. We'll, do some research, and then we'll prove that we did our job correctly.
Well,
I
this
think
job has
that's,
always been 80/20.
yeah.
Like there's always been that balance.
Oh yeah.
It'd be nice if there was some stuff that took out a lot of the we'll say the arduous tasks. Like I've got clients right now using AI to generate content, which is, brutal.
Why?
Um,
Why is that
but
brutal?
what's that?
Why? Why is that brutal? When you, like, in what context?
It's just getting people to articulate all the facets of their business as they're trying to market them.
Oh, okay.
Um, that's really all it is. And usually I send content back and I'm like, hey, here's some ideas. I need you to write this stuff out.
Dude, we just use ChatGPT 3.0, the version 3.0, man. It should be
Yeah,
good.
just get AI to do it. Just send it through the machine.
So I'm
Gonna happen.
I'm down to answer your question, Chad, of what I'd like to see it
Yeah,
because
go for it, man.
I'm invested in this. Like I came to Drupal from, you know, having built my own CMSs for a few years before that and wanted to get out of that fucking business. And love the kind of site building component Lego thing. Seemed really great, and was bitterly disappointed when I discovered that there's no such thing as ready to use themes, that I had to learn how, like I had to get back into fucking coding to get a theme. And then I discovered that like it's all worse than that, that like you have to have, you know, a billion you know, custom modules that you write by hand like you're in the fucking 50s in order to like get anything to work. And then you just get this like conglomerate that stuck together, and if anybody else tries to use it, if you ever inherit, like it all just seemed like a fraud, right? So I want to like undo the fraud. I would love to have that site builder interface, and you know, so that Mary Marketer, who doesn't fucking know PHP, doesn't have to, can build a site with the things, and can, you know, if you need a custom module you don't have to like, you know, hire a triple certified Drupal expert to do it. You just tell the AI, create this module that does this thing, and then you're done. And you know, if you have it, it's good. If it breaks, who cares? Like I want the whole thing to be like accessible to the site builder, to turn on, turn off, divide. I don't know if it's gonna work, but like that's my vision. That's my dream.
My dream for Drupal, if I could do anything for this community right now, I would have them work on the API layer, the JSON API. Wouldn't take a lot of work. And then I would market Drupal as a content platform, not a content management system, but a content platform. And I would build some marquee sites in a decoupled fashion. And I would begin to market Drupal at Vercel conferences, JavaScript conferences, and things like that, which would then, in my vision of what I'm talking about, would bring in new people to our community to bring us ideas that we don't even know about. Like our community is way too myopic, man. You're gonna go to Drupal in Atlanta, you're gonna see all the same people, right? So I feel like what I would do is I would change a certain perspective of Drupal, and I would say Drupal is a component of the digital experience, a great component, right? But we are in this all together. JavaScript, LAMP, this, that. We need to play together and we need to be together. And the way that we do that is by creating a simple API, because our API right now, the JSON API, like, you know, they took all the gas out of that project. So like that shit's like kind of dirty, right? So it's hard to work with. That's a problem. That's a huge problem going forward. You know what I mean? Especially in adopting new frameworks to bring in new people, younger people, people with new ideas. JavaScript and Next is blowing up in the developer world. Drupal is at the bottom of the list. It's literally two from the bottom in terms of developer sentiment towards something they would want to work in, right? And so why not try to like bring those two together? If one's two from the top and the other's two from the bottom, and you bring them together, then Drupal will be in the middle.
I will say working with Drupal as a backend for a Next.js front end has significantly improved the Drupal development experience for me, right? Just because you don't have to fight all of Drupal's front end, and I'm sure there's people who are good at it, but um, it's just been a lot easier to put a site together. You just need the elements to be there, spin it through your API, and the front end does what it needs to do with it.
Yep.
It's a better experience for me.
See, and if this was the perception that was out there, like I could be a government agency and I could host 50 department websites on one Drupal server and serve up all different kinds of front ends. I could feed my mobile app. I could do all kinds of omni-channel distributions of my content, right? People would be like, huh, but you know what the problem with that is and you know, next Drupal and these ideas were hot shit until they weren't. And the reason why they were hot shit until they weren't is because all of these things sort of deprecate the LAMP stack a little bit, right? It's like the LAMP stack is not your primary component of your whole business anymore.
Yeah.
So that's semi non-competitive to people who are in the LAMP stack hosting business.
Yeah, what's to stop you from switching over to Supabase or
Whatever, right? So
Firebase or
it
whatever?
weakens Drupal,
Yeah.
and that's why Dries could not fully embrace it, because he knew if he did that, that would be not good. So he went the Starshot route, which is let's get lots and lots of users in there, which I think is a great idea. My idea would be let's get users from other groups. Yeah, nextdrupal.org. We wrote that. Chapter 3 is that's our project that we gave to the community. It's been 4 years that Next Drupal has been out, right? It's been almost 4 years that Next Drupal's been out. Average downloads on the NPM files, 6,000 downloads a week. It's like one of the number one Drupal NPM file downloads. Nobody talks about it. Nobody says what they're doing with it. I've been to, like, is anybody here from Colorado? Like, I talked to these kids at Boulder, and they're like, John, thank you so much for making Next Drupal. I really appreciate that open source community project and like giving it back to the community for free. It's so good. It just works out of the box. We put 50 department sites onto one Drupal instance. Spun up their own node server. I was like,
I was evaluating it the day before my agency laid me off from my last job.
Really? Yeah. I mean, it's out there. Like Barons.com, I just found out that runs on a Next Drupal site. Like all the content from Barons gets sucked out of Drupal. So, like, these are big things people are not talking about. Like, if they talked about this stuff, Drupal would be seen in a different light. But for some reason, that shit doesn't surface. It's like other stuff seems to surface. You know what I mean? And they need to, and I'm going to go again and have dinner with all the people at the Drupal organization, and I'm going to let them know exactly what I think, because I feel like getting new people into this community will help all of us. We're all getting old, man. I've been in this for 20 years. Most of us have been in it for 10 plus years. There's not a lot of communities really with developers like that, right? One thing for 10 years, 15 years, 16 years. Are we really seeing out of the box? No. So that's why we need to bring in other developers. That's my idea.
I think one angle that it keeps coming up here is Drupal's old. We're old. And the job landscape seems to be changing quite a bit. Is there something that we feel either Drupal or Drupal CMS can do for us to serve us, the community that has served it for so long, where it can make us more competitive in this work landscape? It's been really weird and chaotic.
I don't know. I got into Drupal for the beer.
And here you still are.
I don't know how it turned into a career.
I know, right? Same with me, man. When I joined Drupal 20 years ago, the reason why I joined was because it was like cool. It was like Grateful Dead times, man. Like we'd go, we'd hang out, we'd talk. There were like little events. People would do shit, t-shirts, stickers. I loved it. It was so much fun, man. I was like, this is amazing. It's like software, like the open source, true open source, right? And then it turned into a job, and then money came into it, and like anything that money comes into, it just kind of the scene changes, it changed as soon as like money came into it. Drupal 8.
So that's my proposal: is we just get rid of the money. This will solve
Well,
itself.
that's my
All
that's
beer all the
one of
time?
my crazy ideas. I got a crazy ass idea, which is Acquia is owned by a private equity firm. Drupal, the control of Drupal is really owned by a private equity firm.
Vista Partners.
Vista Partners owns almost 300 businesses. Right? So they know they got a big old spreadsheet. Any business that's got red on it. It's like, oh, who's this guy? What's going on over here? Wait. We don't lose money at Vista Partners. What's going on, right? And so my pipe dream would be that Acquia gets dismantled. Dries is an employee now, right? So he could be fired. He could be laid off, just like anybody else. He gets laid off and resigns. Like, fuck it. I'm done. I made my money. I'm out. That would throw the Drupal project into chaos for like 6 months. Then the Drupal project will come back together again with its true spirit and soul of open source, as opposed to a money-driven bullshit we're all competing with each other project, because now we all got to work together, because if we don't work together, this fucking boat's going to sink. And that's the way
Yeah,
it
fuck
was before the
capitalism.
money came in. Right? That's my idea. So, it's recorded, so it might get out there. But I'm telling you, man, like, to get back to that passion that everybody had before, it was like, oh shit, I actually compete with Luke. Fuck him. I'm not gonna work with him anymore. Well, I compete with Chad. I compete with Eric. I compete with Nick. I compete with Nora. I don't want to talk to you people.
You don't compete with me anymore, man.
Right. Before,
I'm
it wasn't
visiting.
like that, man. It was like, we're not competing, we're growing together. All ships are on a rising tide. That shit was lost years ago, man, and that needs to come back. And I think the only way to really make that come back is to throw that project into chaos, and that's to lose your leader. And I know it sounds harsh, but Dries has been the leader for a
little
long
bit.
time. He's made a lot of money. Come on. You know? Dude.
Like,
What
I
are you
don't know
gonna
if
do?
I
You're
fully
gonna
agree
be
with
forever
that.
doing that?
Chad and I have a directly competitive skill set. Like, we can't work at the same company because we do the same job.
Hmm.
And but we've always been buddies, right? You know,
You're
it's
not in sales. I'm in sales and
I'm in
business. You know, like,
sales. I'm
okay,
in a
well, if you're in
lot.
sales, and like when someone,
Yeah,
like one of your
I know what you're
competitors ripped the
I know
deal
what
from
you're
you, man,
saying,
you're
but
like,
it's
oh, fuck, dude, seriously, you took that from me. Oh, I can't believe
yeah.
it.
Some of
Yeah,
the unspoken rules that used to be there about not sniping people's
gone.
clients and things like that, those aren't there anymore. You're right.
No, it's competitive as hell. And every project that comes out now, it's got like 40 vendors on it. Go look at the vendor list. It's like, wow, look at that. Every vendor from the whole Drupal community is like responding to this one RFP, because there's just not that many RFPs and everybody needs work, right?
Don't worry,
And so it's like,
I got taken out by health issues.
you're
I'm out of
cooked.
the game now.
Oh
So
man, I wish that would happen. Well, I don't want health issues, but I do want to be out of the game.
it's
Well,
been
it
nice.
feels like that on the RFP side of things, there's a lot of backdoor agreements that are kind of, I don't know, clouding things too. It's like it's supposed to be a system by which it's fair and there's bidding and all this other stuff and whatever else, but
It's always been an
half the
illusion.
time it's just pomp and circumstance as far as I'm concerned.
That's why a lot
I
of
That's
hate
so
the
frustrating.
RFP process more than anything in the world. And I feel sorry for the people on the other end. You know, I really do. Like, if you were somebody who had to select a vendor for your business and you got 40, and you're a Drupal shop, right? So you got some Drupal shit going on, and you get 40 vendors from 40 Drupal vendors. You're like, you read all of them, they're all exactly the same. None of us are any different. There is no difference in my proposal, your proposal. They're all exactly the same. They all say the same thing. And then so they're like, geez, what do we do? Throw them down a set of stairs, and those that land upright are the ones that are going to go into second round. I mean, literally, I had the Department of Transportation of Alaska say, sorry, John, you lost that bid. And I'm like, shit, why? He's like, well, it came down to a coin flip, and you lost the coin flip. And I was like, oh, I swear to God, I'm like, I resign. I'm done. I'm not going to do this job anymore.
I believe that.
What do you got, Eric?
Put outside.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I need to drop off, but great seeing you guys and meeting
Wonderful seeing you, Eric, man. Hope to see you next time, man.
We'll see.
Yeah, no doubt.
I do too.
I would love to stay and listen more to John because I'm enjoying this, but
Should this be 2 hours long?
care
It's
of
kind of
the
a
kids.
long meeting.
Yeah, you're at a bar, you set it up for 8 to 9, and you leave at 1. You know what I mean? It's like,
If I'm being honest, I completely forgot that the meeting was happening, so I showed up late.
All right,
Yeah,
now
I
thank
mean,
you,
it is set up for
everyone.
2
on
hours.
it.
Thanks for your LinkedIn post, Chad.
I
January
try to
8th,
hit
when is
people.
that? Oh shit.
Everybody has a different communication habit, so I try to hit people on multiple fronts, and even then, like, it doesn't hit everything. So I started working with the Drop Times. They approached
We
me and
got
said, "Hey,
cool.
we can help sponsor that if you just put our logo on it." Well, I'm like, "That cost me nothing. Great, let's do it."
They're cool
Uh,
guys. They want to rebuild community. Drupal community got
yeah,
really kicked down, man. It got kicked down hard. Like, I ran SFDUG for 15 years, or 14 years, and now SFDUG is just like, oh my God, it's hard to get any life back in that sucker. That resuscitation doesn't work. Nothing works. You know what I mean? And so
yeah.
these like Zoom meetings, I think, are actually a pretty good idea, because you get people from all over the place, right?
I'm trying to bring back the Vancouver one. I talked to some of those folks, but yeah, I agree with you, John. It's been a little bit challenging. I still do see value in seeing people face to face
Oh,
when
yeah.
it's possible, but it is the challenge of the logistics, getting everybody coordinated. And until then, I think this is something that I'll
I'll
be
tell you,
doing.
the Victoria one is never coming back.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
good. That's just
that's, I mean, it was what, Nick Wilde and Will Hetherington and
yeah.
me, and even Ryan didn't show up to those. Different Ryan. Um,
Well, and I think a lot of people, I would argue to say that maybe as we're aging as a community, literally, a lot of people are kind of moving away from central city locations and things like that too. Like here in Chicago, it's kind of always a challenge to get together for a in-person meetup because we're so spread apart. We've
yeah.
even floated the idea of like doing like a rotating schedule or something like that, but there's not enough like for each individual one to
That's an
justify
interesting
the
note.
effort. So
Yeah, whatever. Zoom works.
I mean, if I harken back to where I started my career in Microsoft, I would try to find any event to go to just to meet people, see what are they doing with technology. And this is before .NET and all that. So I started doing that, but then when .NET came out, I was already playing around with Linux and PHP and Python. And I'm like, screw this. I'm going to go see what's out in open source. And I found a few different meetups, Drupal being one of them, which is how I met Nick in Baltimore.
Huh.
And it was a different time, I think. This is, obviously pre-COVID, and I think there's a different attitude towards meetups because of that
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. So I think that gave that force function of doing more Zoom related things. But here we are. The community still does exist, and I think we still need to pump some energy into it in some shape or form. So I'm going to take this quick moment while you're all still here and say thank you for coming to this meetup, and I really do to see you come
You'll
more.
get the invoice.
Well, my payment to you, since Nick, you
Are you
weren't.
guys going to DrupalCon? Who's going to
Yeah,
DrupalCon? Mike, you going to
Oh, I'm
DrupalCon?
out.
Natalie?
Yep.
Everyone,
I
all
haven't bought the
right.
ticket
Stop by
yet,
the
but I'm
Chapter 3 booth
planning.
and say, cello. We'll be there.
I'm on the fence. I'm helping the DEI group with DrupalCon, so
Okay.
makes it more affordable for me to be able to go there with free tickets. And I've been doing that since the Baltimore DrupalCon is helping
Yeah.
out to get
Both
a
of my talks got kicked, so I'm out.
Yeah. Have you all ever heard about volunteering though? I think there's still like a couple days left to register as a volunteer. You
yeah.
put in, I think it's like what, 6 hours of volunteering time or something, and they just give you a $900 ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
They're
might
like,
We did
thanks
be
for
that in
coming.
Barcelona.
might
We
be a
did that
plan for
in
next year.
Barcelona, actually. We volunteered in Barcelona at front desk for
Yeah.
5 hours.
Yeah. That's
I
it.
We
like
had ulterior
totally
motives for that,
submitted
though.
for volunteer stuff and never received anything back. And I wonder if I have to if I would have had to have resubmitted to.
What if they responded to you and you just haven't found it yet?
No, it's not here. I swear. It got lost in the ether.
They also started a thing this year that was local ambassador. I think
Yeah.
if you're the kind of person that's
So
like a meetup
that's
organizer
what I'm
or
kind of getting involved in.
yeah.
Like, you know what? Never mind. I'll just focus on the event side of things, like the local event side of
And that,
things.
that makes
Or
total sense for you, right?
Yeah.
That's your whole shtick.
and Nora, isn't mid-camp like the week before DrupalCon or something like that?
After. So it usually is the same month as when DrupalCon Atlanta is this year. And basically they stole our spot. And so we Avi was there, at last DrupalCon and complained, and he's like, "Man, you're killing my mid camp." And so Dries actually is coming to our mid camp in exchange, and we're having it in May. We're doing it later
Did you just have mid camp?
in March of this previous year. Yeah,
Maybe I'll go to mid.
not just, but we had it.
Did Brian Perry? Did he presented there, right? Brian,
I want to say that he did have a session
Drupal
this
API client.
2024. Yeah.
No.
I'll come if you give me a session, but you have to let me talk about whatever.
You have to submit. I mean, like,
No.
submission deadline is
It's
the
going to be a
12th.
surprise day of. No heads up.
It's just Nick.
I'm just gonna
That's all it's
talk.
gonna say on that. That's all it's
I
gonna
mean,
say.
there's always a
Nick,
chance somebody
12
like
to
doesn't
6.
arrive.
Is your session name just question mark, sort of like those candies that you used to get, the wild flavor?
Yeah, basically.
I think Brian Perry will present again at mid camp because he's really close to that. So
What was my tagline? You thought Morton DK was bad?
more in DK. Who knows? Let's not talk about more. Yeah, he's really close. So he'll talk about Drupal API client or Drupal front end.
Yeah, I mean, I know that we selected a lot of API focused stuff in 2024, just because it was already like a thing. Or AI stuff as well. But this year, I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot of submissions just naturally for Drupal CMS and all the things that kind of feature-wise are coming along with that. So it'll be interesting. We're going to be getting into session selection here. I don't know, hopefully, if we get enough submissions by the end of the week.
Well, now knowing that it's not at the same time as DrupalCon, I don't know why I thought it was the same month. I'll submit a couple sessions.
Usually is in March. Yeah, we even contemplated like an April date, but we still felt like that was a little too close.
That's after DrupalCon. Is DrupalCon in March?
Yep,
Yeah,
end of March,
late March.
which is good for Atlanta. Gets a little toasty there.
I actually prefer April in Chicago. Like the March in Chicago is not always reliable, like what the weather's going to be. This in 2024, it actually had flurries of snow during one of the nights.
I miss the food in Chicago. I just go there and eat myself to death.
Of course, come for the food for anything, if anything else, that's for sure.
I mean, there's a conference happening too, but you know.
Right.
If any of you guys have the wherewithal, you should check out Web Summit in Vancouver. It's a great event. It'll reinvigorate you in technology. 70,000 plus people show up to this thing. Nice. They'll have 2,000 startups there, and it's just wild to see what all the little gold miners in the tech world are doing, trying to find a little nugget, make some money. So
I've been thinking a lot more about attending non-Drupal events. I will say that, like, I feel like that there isn't enough that we're capturing, but I still want to scope to something. So I feel I was like looking into higher ed tech conferences, and I didn't really, I don't know, I didn't satisfy my itch there too much. But
check out Web Summit, man. I went for the first time in Lisbon this year, and man, it blew my mind. So I just walked out of that. I was like, oh my God, I got so full of ideas, you know what I mean? And inspiration to see people from all over the world trying to do the exact same thing we are. DrupalCon over and over again, it's getting smaller and smaller, man. Like Barcelona had 1050 people at, 1,050 attendees.
I think the value proposition isn't what it used to be. I think what ends up happening is a lot of times we'll end up trying to relive days of past, and it just isn't the same. And then when it's not the same, it kind of deters you from going again. So I think there needs to be just a new value proposition for DrupalCon. And I think there's an attempt to do that each year. It's just iterative upgrades isn't really as appealing.
I mean, for us, we look at it as the old family reunion that we go to once a year in the United States, and we see our old family members that we've all talked to for the last, 20 years, right? We're all kind of in the same boat, and this is in my opinion, that's a problem. That's why my vision is to bring new folks in that I don't know, that are doing cool things. You know what I mean? That I don't know.
I get a lot of
like, hey, wow, that's fucking cool, man.
validation from it.
Say what?
Yeah, I am doing cool work. I have done some cool stuff. Holy shit. Like, these are the people that know that. Like, yeah, you're right.
I'd like to see that, and I really am encouraging the association and Dries and stuff to really look beyond the doors of the island of Drupal. And they had talked about that, and they were saying that, and then they fucking pivoted like mad dogs on Starshot. They completely dropped all other initiatives, like kicked them to the curb.
There was one initiative we talked about in the last meetup, John. There was one initiative that they just picked up which I think is worthwhile and kind of relates heavily to DrupalCon, which is the IXP, the Inexperience Initiative, the idea of bringing in new blood into Drupal. So I think
Yeah,
that's worthwhile.
I'm super interested to see like what the plan is around that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's also, but that's kind of, yeah, I would say that that and the Drupal Open University, if anybody's heard of that running around, those are very much grassroots community generated. They're not I mean, there's some support, from the Drupal Association in the sense of the IXP, there's some credit stuff that would be involved. But yeah, it kind of resonated with me earlier when we were talking about, sort of the community needs to be, like by the community again for it to revitalize properly.
Doesn't Starshot feel like a top-down initiative?
So did Drupal 8.
Yeah.
Drupal 8 totally was. We got PHP shit shoved up our ass, and then during that whole process, the Drupal community blew up. But I felt like
Sort of. I don't know.
Starshot.
I feel like it's kind of both to some degree, but I don't know.
I know. I'm interested in an opinion around like that. To me, when I saw that, I felt like, I felt like it was a top-down decision. And I will just say something from being in the community for 20 years. Show me one top-down decision that's really improved Drupal. All things that are awesome in Drupal have come from the bottom up.
Well, and a lot of them have been swallowed by Drupal core, right? Like
Mhm.
views was a contributed module, and now it's part of core. And fieldable entities is like that too. You could point to a lot of things like that. It would have been nice if Layout Builder had been something that was developed by the community and vetted and popular and used on 40,000 sites, and then they said, oh, this is so good, we're bringing it into core. But
That's
like
the
you
thing.
say, it was a top-down decision, and it's like sort of where core is where innovative features go to die. So it ended up being this like promise of a thing that was coming and then not coming. So I think one of the advantages of Starshot potentially, like I said, is because you can develop new features faster without everything being designed by committee, like a lot of other core things is, they've been able to go to a lot of contributed projects and say, you contributed project, we're now anointing you with the power of Starshot. And this feature that is a contrib module, like there's one that's for cookie consent. For some reason, there's like, let's say there's 10 or 12 different modules for cookie consent, but how do you know which one is the good one? Well, now there's one that's in Starshot. And so you can go to that one and you're like, well, at least the Starshot people like it. So I can use that one. And some of the AI things, there's at least 3 or 4 different ways of doing AI in Drupal, but there's one that's in Starshot, right? There's some of the other things are a little bit more banal, but I think some of the ones that like every site needs, but not every site probably has the same approach to it. Could be interesting. I think I would kind of wish somebody would do something like that for search, but search is really hard, right? Without some sort of like an outside service or like third-party software or whatever. But I would love to see some more things like that. I think
But I guess the question would go
next,
to like, why is just because that module's in Starshot, why is it the best one?
Yeah.
There's 5 of them. Why are there 5? See, Drupal's never really operated under that paradigm before, right? Drupal has always operated under the paradigm from community up of complete openness, right? And so this is kind of an opinionated way of saying these are the best modules out of all of these modules. All those other guys that wrote that stuff, yeah, they're not that good. Wait a minute. That's not the way it was before, right? The way it was before was like, through a process of vetting, a process of using, a process of community. Here, it feels top down still, even with those decisions of like, this is a better module than that module, so we put it into Starshot. Well, what does that say to the 10 other module guys?
Yeah, I think I think
Sticky wicket.
the original idea was like you have UberCart became Drupal Commerce. That was the bottom up. It had a very specific solution. And there were other competitors in that space, but it was the real one that stood out. But it remains outside of core because you would never put something like that in core. It really should be this kind of bespoke sort of solution. And I would argue kind of the same thing for web form because it's such this complex space from especially a UX standpoint and a solutioning standpoint. But then in core, you have the contact module. It already has that. So there's almost this like kind of riding the fence sort of line of what does or doesn't go into core. I'm sure some purists may argue core should be as bare bones as possible and leave the rest to the community. But I think the counter argument to that is there are some fundamental things that any website really should be considering, and those are the things that should end up in core, like path auto.
Well,
Like,
yeah, that's a good one. The web form is a really interesting example because there's probably about 30 to 50% of what's in web form that's implemented custom just for web form that probably should be in Drupal core, and it would make Drupal core way better.
yeah,
Right. So there are some things like that where like splitting a project apart and saying every Drupal module can now do this
yeah.
would be awesome. But
It's
it
like the
takes
fundamentals.
people to organize an initiative and work on it for 3 years, and then it shows up in core.
Like what
Well,
makes a
see,
good
that's the
CMS
fundamental issue that
website?
Starshed is trying to solve, right? Is that sort of like this underlying issue that is what's trying to be solved is that the current workflow for innovation within Drupal is for some reason stifled up in old school ways of doing it, whatever it is. I don't understand that part of it, right? And they're like, hey, fuck this. We're just going to start over. And we're not going to have any of that stuff. I think they should have just told all those people we're starting over and start developing Drupal more efficiently, man. But this has been an argument that's been going on for years. And so again, this is why it feels like a top-down decision, right? Because it's really fundamentally not the way the community has operated in the past. And that's the disconnect beyond the sales stuff. That's the disconnect that I personally have with it, right? Like, okay, well, where's the community member that built Layout Builder? Because it was such a great solution that there was one innovative guy out there that took it upon themselves to build it. And there was a reason why they didn't do that, right? Because Acquia would have just absorbed that into their site builder product and monetized it.
And they kind
You
of have.
stifled innovation, right? People are like, fuck this, I'm not doing that. And then Acquia tried it themselves, right? There was a layout builder inside Site Studio, right? But it didn't work. Layout Builder's been on deck to build for 6 years. It's not been on deck for 6 years because it's easy to build and it can be built in 3 months using Starshot because we've eliminated all the barriers. This is the issue that I have, right? This is the issue. It's like I'm thinking to myself, okay, guys, like, listen, man, this stuff's been on deck for a long time. Fundamentally, something else is up.
Well, I
Why
still,
has Project Browser, Layout Builder, and auto updates been on the project roadmap for at least the last 5 DrupalCons?
yeah.
Because Drupal can't run Composer? Like
Whatever it is, there's
if
a fundamental something going on, right? Like, what is this? This is bullshit. This is a community that should be able to figure this out. We shouldn't have to add a layer on top of it from the top to band-aid over all this shit.
well, here's the
That's what it
problem with
feels like to
layout.
me.
I mean, here's the problem with Layout Builder is that like fundamentally it's an inherently inaccessible idea to like let people drag stuff all over because it like does not enforce a hierarchical structure on the content at all. And you're like, I'm gonna put a block here and a picture here and blah 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 blah. And it's really hard to create an accessible website when people just put random things everywhere and you're not ensuring that like, oh, this is an H2 and this is an H3. And like, so I mean, people have different, so we want to build accessible sites, so maybe we wouldn't use that to do that. Maybe we'd use paragraphs because it actually enforces like this is a section, add another section, add another section, add another section, you know? So it's there's different people for different things, but like yeah.
It's a sticky wicket, right?
Well,
And they're saying now we've added another layer, removed all the barriers. It's going to be done in 2 years or done in a year or whatever, right? And then we go back to where we started this conversation like a while back, where we were talking about the perception of Drupal, right? And perception is 9/10 of the law when it comes to the world. Like it's not about truth, it's about perception, right? And if they fuck this up and they don't deliver the experience builder that they've been talking about, the perception will be Drupal is hard. They couldn't even build this stuff themselves. That's going to be bad for business and stifle sales, which is where my head immediately goes because that's all I'm responsible for is selling shit. And I'm like, people are going to be like, listen, man, there's a mixed message coming out of the year, right? You said you could do it. It's not there. We have this. We don't have that. This is my big paranoid worry. But I tend to be paranoid, right? Because I'm in sales.
And I mean, I'm not sure if everyone here has heard this, but the demo system that was used at Barcelona,
Hard-coded.
design system, Drupal Experience Builder thing that was used there, that whole piece has been broken off into a second phase. This is not being delivered right now.
Oh, no.
Right.
The only thing that's being delivered are recipes with an event content type. What did they say? In events, like three
I
content
think the
types that have, like,
SEO
hot
one is
filters.
in there, and
Yeah.
and some of the AI features are kind of like experimental right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a huge list.
But isn't recipes
again-
going into core too? Like we don't need like Drupal CMS for recipes, right? We're just
No,
able to use it in
recipes
core.
is usable now. You can
Yeah.
use recipes, but they're kind of hard to make.
Yeah.
Based upon my understanding, and I think I pasted it in the chat here, but my understanding is that Drupal CMS is basically, in a sense, like a starter kit where, you have core plus the contrib modules that were selected for Starshot, and then, the various recipes that were designed, for Starshot. So in a
For
sense, it's
people who
just,
need events.
yes. And I feel like, because I spun it up like last month to check it out. Unfortunately, I don't have it up now because my personal laptop is acting up, but they were events. I feel like there was a blog content type and something else that I'm blanking out on. Might have been a portfolio content type.
That's good. We've built WordPress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if one good thing come of it is maybe we can get some stuff out of core that like the blogging stuff that like we don't need, like the body field. Why wouldn't you create any entity to add a body field with a summary? Like and like, I don't use those ever for those, but like, I created a block and it's like, oh, a body field. I'm like with a summary. You never have a summary of a block. Why is it putting this thing here? Why is this the thing that it's adding? And you can't delete the body fields.
Well, there's your
There's
problem.
they-
You're not summarizing your block.
Well, I do think that recipes does unlock the other feature we were talking about with AI, where you can tell the AI what type of content you're trying to create, and we can remove, in theory, and I'm saying this as an information architect, it cringes me to even say this, but we can remove the bad practices that we oftentimes see clients make when making content types because they don't understand field structures and things like that. So if I said I want a person content type for a staff directory or something like that, you can tell AI to produce that, and it can say, oh, well, I already have a recipe for that that's really good and standards based, like schema.org, with the specific things for your use case, or I can kind of vet that a little bit, but it's still a better approach than them having no bearings whatsoever on good, data structure decisions. I feel like the promise is there. I'd love to see how it's executed and see how it's done. I've seen some demos show how that might look, but I'm optimistic.
Yeah, Jacob was on a really good kick with the schema.org module, and then recipes came out, and I'm kind of like, it's somewhat, undoes some of the things he was trying with that schema.org. Like one of the coolest things I saw him demo there was, oh, and by the way, because I imported this schema from schema.org, now all of my decoupled front end components from any website that uses the schema.org module now just magically work because they're all using the same fields and the same field names and the same data types. And it was like, yes, that, but now we could do it with recipes, right? So there is like, I think there are some advantages too to making recipes more of a thing. Drupal CMS being the biggest user of recipes today. I don't see a lot of people publishing recipes yet that are not in Starshot, but I hope and pray that very soon we will see more.
Well, somebody pays me.
Yeah, right.
But like, so Drupal CMS is like one batch of recipes. Are we gonna have like Drupal event platformer, like Drupal, are we gonna have like Drupal dash like whatever. Are we just
Well,
doing CMS, or are we going to do a bunch of these different recipe
well,
bundles?
one thing I would like to see actually recipes do is, let's say that there's like a single sign-on module, right? The single sign-on module is a problem that I've had to solve this year. Is there's a lot of things that you might want to do if you're using single sign-on provider A or single sign-on provider B or this tool or that tool. But in order to make the sort of core module work, they have to make the checkboxes work for everything. So what if there's just a recipe that I ship with my single sign-on module that's like, here's the one if you're using Mini Orange single sign-on, here's the recipe for Mini Orange. You fill in these 3 fields and everything else just starts working. I would love to see examples like that where it's like, we made this library, here's how you make the library work for like these 5 popular use cases.
Wasn't there some sort of snippet thing like years and years ago that was kind of like configurations? Like maybe I'm thinking like Drupal 7 features stuff, but
Features.
No.
but this feels familiar. It feels like we're kind of coming back to some.
You guys remember
No.
features? I mean, features was
yeah.
oversold and underdelivered to the max.
Oh, I
You would
love
build out
features.
feature sets,
And it was
and then
abused.
you'd upgrade or whatever. Oh my god, we
I
Have
mean,
you
the
ever
problem
you ever
is-
wanted to slam your hand into a car door? That's what features feels like.
Well, okay. I mean, like features, what it was pitched for and what it actually did were 2 different things. Like installing features on sites, it sucked at, but like managing configuration, it was fantastic. It was like
Oh, there was
configuration
no
management before.
configuration solution at the time, so features was
Yeah.
magnificent.
And it lets you group your configurations into things, and like, you can override, export, just like import and export single parts of your thing. Whereas like right now, I would love to be able to like import just the one section of my code and not, do the whole
Unfortunately, there
thing.
is not one person who is spending money who gives a shit about any of this stuff, right? And so that's why we have Starshot. They don't care about any of this. We can talk about this stuff until the cows come home. The reality is that it's money-based business, man. Like all of us, like Mike, he's at a shop. They got to sell shit, right? And so it comes down to that. Is Starshot going to increase our market share? I have no idea. I hope it does. It has maybe the potential to, but the Communicado right now does not necessarily support shops like Chapter 3, right? Like you don't need a developer anymore. That doesn't support Chapter 3, right? Like Chapter 3 makes all our money on development. Mike's shop, like, hey man, you have a multi-site rolling? Well, put it on Starshot on Acquia, and well, you don't need those guys anymore. You can do all that shit yourself.
Yeah, and the
And
longest
they
time,
built it
a lot of
for free.
agencies might try to subsidize the cost of repeatable solutions, but it's not often the case.
Problem is a repeatable solution that's been subsidized and is public drives the overall value of that solution down.
Yeah.
I can't sell it anymore, right? Like if they could just go to Acquia and pop up a site in 2 seconds, like why are they going to come to me?
Well, to be fair, there are 2 strong examples of a subsidized solution. There's Drupal Commerce and there's Web Forms. Like they were highly subsidized, but then once it gets out into the community, the value really comes because there's interest. There's just so many people. But as soon as
Rockowitz has struggled with those projects to make money.
yeah, of course.
Right? He has struggled. They're amazing projects, but it's like the guy didn't make any money.
It's a passion project more than anything.
Right. But the reality is we're all human beings. I live in the Bay Area, man. It's fucking expensive here.
Yeah.
Where I live, expensive. And everybody here has families and this and that and the other thing. And we've made our economy for the last 20 years on this particular piece of software, right? Under the guise that it's a development-centric platform, you need developers to help you with this shit. It's enterprise class. And to do a quick pivot, like out of the fucking blue, quick pivot, and then throw out messaging that's like, we're going to make Drupal into a system where you don't need developers anymore. That to me kills the sales cycle. And then John is extremely worried. And I start to look in other places. And that's what happened last year. We started looking around other places, other software, other technologies, other CMSs. I'm like, I don't trust this shit. Like the sales is going to clamp up. And it's like, how many shops? Like, how long could Kalamuna last with no sales? 0.
Yeah.
Maybe 6 months.
I can tell you how long North Studio lasted.
Yeah. Well, are you North Studio? Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, when the sales dry up, it dries up, right? And then that's what we're faced with, right? And it's like this consolidation of power into several vendors, right? And primarily outsourcers. I don't know if you noticed or not, but Acquia laid off all of their people in the United States and rehired them all in fucking Brazil, you know, what do you got now? Yeah, I mean
Oh
that's
no, I was
bullshit.
gonna say I used to work at Aqua and I was one of the
Right.
people that was laid
Right.
off.
But the reality is they laid off everybody here and they hired them over there, right? For half the cost. And this is the part where my anxiety goes up over Starshot because the people who came up with this idea, they don't care about sales. Don't care about agencies supporting 25, 30 families. They care about like, oh shit, nobody's using Drupal because we fucked up. So let's pivot into a realm that makes it impossible to sell.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And there's no answer to that. And then to come to me and say, I want 30 grand a year of resources to help build this thing, I was like, oh my God. I didn't even know what to say to that. Literally,
People
that's
are
what I got.
tripping over themselves to like, everyone Calmuna's like, oh, let's get in on Starshot. Let's do Starshot stuff. Oh my God, AI. Oh, so I'm sure there's lots of people interested.
Probably.
A more question out of curiosity. Is it possible that Starshot has the not just optics, but the true potential to invite more people back to what started Drupal? Hobbyists, small sites, medium sites, that sort of thing, to drive interest in Drupal as a solution. And then for the more complex things, which Drupal is also really good at, you want a university site, Drupal's really good at that sort of thing. Do we think that by bringing that small space back, it might drive up the market share and then pull in more Drupal developers who are interested in the more complex things?
I was hoping it would do that. I was hoping like, oh, like when Dries got up, it's like we're gonna go after like smaller people do Drupal stuff. I'm like, finally, like small nonprofits, blah 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 blah. And then it's like the mid market and marketers. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, oh, okay. So now you want you want marketing agencies. That's your new, people you're chasing because
And I get
enterprise level wasn't lucrative enough.
I get it. I get that a number of years ago, Acquia's biggest push was towards enterprise, and I
Mm-hmm.
get it for a company like that that would be their drive.
Well,
I mean
but I mean,
that's
Dries got up at every DrupalCon and talked about that. Like
yeah,
that was his keynote every year. It's like Drupal's got to get serious with
and
enterprise.
it
No,
drops people
Drupal is
off.
for ambitious site builders. That's when he pivoted. That
Yeah,
was a DrupalCon about 7 or 8 DrupalCons ago. And it was like people were trying to understand because nobody could really use Drupal 8. We like told the Drupal 7 crew to pound sand. That was the small market.
yeah.
We told them to pound sand with Drupal
Now
8,
we're
man.
now we're
Pound sand.
apologizing through a solution that's currently partly vaporware.
Right, but that ultimately his response to people feeling like he told them to go pound sand is to say, well, Drupal is actually for the ambitious site builder.
Mhm.
All right, that was the messaging. That's how he got out of Drupal 7. He called Drupal 8 for ambitious site builders.
Mm-hmm.
And then Drupal 8, like the adoption was 0. We know because like we hired Alex Pott. We did all of this work to push Drupal 8 over the line. Spent a fucking truckload of money doing that. Just sending the money back to the community to get Drupal 8 over the line, right? Not fully seeing the full picture of like what happened within the community because Jen Lampton, ex Chapter 3 employee, forked Drupal 7, which I thought was fucking nuts. And I was pissed at her for it. But now, today, I'm like, wow, what a fucking brilliant move that was.
It was
Wow.
both nuts and brilliant. It was both
It
of
was
those things.
nuts when she did it because, like, she
Yeah.
knew she was going to piss everybody off. Because, like, right now, I can fork Drupal. Chapter 3 can fork Drupal and call it something else. And Drupal can't do anything about it. Right? If I use the name Drupal, then I have a problem. But if I fork it and call it something
Yeah.
else, I can completely benefit from all of the work that Drupal does, which is what Jen essentially does. Now it might be a little bit more difficult for her,
So
right? But brilliant move, man.
let's fork Drupal and just call it Starshot CMS and just
I see that as maybe people who are ballsy out there will go out there and fork Drupal and call it their own shit, and then still use the community, right,
I
as
mean,
where all of the innovation comes from, but then have your own version of it, you know, under a different name. So there's no perception, there's no attachment, there's no nothing. Do you think that's an insane idea?
I think it's an idea. I think it's only insane if it doesn't work.
well,
Well,
I think that if I think core, like if we can get a smaller core, like hey, small core guys, if we can get a smaller core, then that would let us build more like recipe distributions and things like that, and people can have their own packaging thing. So hopefully this switch to separating Drupal CMS and Drupal core can like give us a bit more space for that, creating your own CMS package.
and a lot of companies have done that through various devices, whether it
Yeah.
was old school features or install profiles, distributions. I know YMCA is a strong example of that. I
Is there some decoupling happening from core? Like, I mean, of features? Like,
always been.
Well, I mean,
like
Drupal
what?
CMS is on top of core, but separate from core. So that's
Yeah.
It's like
so like core is remaining its own project, and then Drupal CMS is doing their whole thing. So it's like now there's two systems.
I
Hopefully,
just
I mean,
mean,
a
is
very
there
a
some
very
like
small
core
number of
features that are
things.
kind of moving out
A
of
very
core?
small number of things have left core, but it's like the book module and the aggregator.
Yeah.
Not very many things are leaving core.
I mean, look how long it took to get rid of the color module.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
I know, but I
I don't
like,
know
hey,
about that, Mike.
this
A
might be
lot
an
of
opportunity.
meetings.
This might be an opportunity to get some of this stuff out of Drupal core that I constantly have to uninstall. So like, let's use this as an opportunity to like get back into small core.
It's interesting. I think that there's room
All right,
for all
kids.
the ideas out there. And the
I
best
gotta jet.
ideas, like I said, come from
Good,
community.
good chatting with
And chapter
everybody.
3
Hit it,
gave
Nick.
next Drupal.org to community. It's downloaded 5,000 times a week. I'm going to fucking go full gas on that thing. 100% full gas on it to try to get the community to rise up like that. Right? Yeah, Starshot's great. That's downward initiative, man. There's what's known as a rising tide. That's where I'm going. I'm going to try it. That's my gamble right now, is to see if we can actually do that or not. Because again, no NPN file is downloaded as much as that. Find me an NPN file that's downloaded 5,000 times a week consistently for the last 3 years. That's ridiculous. Okay, that's completely. I don't know what I really wish there was a log file on it, but there's not. So that's going to be my approach to it. And if they want Starshot, we will create Starshot decoupled, right? And it's already halfway there. It's called the Wonder Next Starter Kit. I don't know if you guys have seen that by Wonder.io. These guys, they created an amazing installation of decoupled Drupal. Amazing. And it's fully functional, fully works. Just boom, press a button, it's done, right?
What was that called again? Wonder what?
Wonder.io. If you look for like Wonder, WUNDER, decoupled starter kit, you'll see it right away. These guys did such a great job on it, and it really demonstrates so clearly that like Starshot's awesome, but this could be way more awesome. So my team's also working on a layout builder for decoupled sites, right? Because if everyone wants layout builder, I think I can build it faster inside a decoupled Next.js environment than you're going to be able to build it in a LAMP stack encapsulating. Did you hear about this? If they're encapsulating JS, they're like, no, you can build headless sites without going headless. We just encapsulate it in PHP. I'm like, think about what you just said right there. You're encapsulating Next.js in PHP. That's fucking nuts. We all know it. Not scalable, full of problems, right? So we're going to go down that road, man. And I'm going to keep telling community members, listen, if you guys want to stay relevant, this is what you have to do this.
So they coupled the decoupled.
Yeah. And talk about it, right? So that's the biggest problem is that people don't really want to talk about it. I don't know. Why isn't University of Colorado? I'm going to approach them again, say, hey, why aren't you talking about the 60 plus websites that you consolidated off Acquia onto one Drupal box
Well,
that
I
they
will
host
say
on their network with one node server? 60
it was
sites.
really interesting to see where we've gone with this conversation about Drupal CMS. I didn't have any preconceived expectations, but I think this has been a really
You
good.
get me on a conversation, you never know where it's
Oh yeah,
going to go,
oh,
right?
yeah,
But
and And I don't
The
think it's a
thing about Drupal community is if you don't put a stake in the sand, nothing's going to happen, right? Because the sands are always shifting and moving, right? So like chapter 3 has been around for a long time, right? We got a pretty relatively decent pulpit to communicate out to people this solution, right? And so I'm gonna challenge Dries and the Drupal Association and all of them. I'm gonna create Starshot decoupled that kicks Starshot lamp stacks ass. That's my goal. You'll see. Remember, the lamp stack's been renamed the dad stack, right? Because we're all getting older, and so the dad stack is what we work on. We don't, our kids, kids up in college, you ask them about lamp stacks. Hey, man, you know what a lamp stack is? They'll be like, a what? A lamp stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, dude, all the cool shit that runs the world. They're like, never heard of it. We're old. They're young. We want them to come into our community. If we stay on the lamp stack, I'm like, okay, this doesn't make sense.
I mean, I never think about the lab stack because it just is handled on the server, so I don't really have to worry about that.
Well, that's because you trust people like Pantheon and Acquia,
Yeah.
and this is going to be the great year of transition for both of those companies.
I don't trust Acquia, so
No,
and Pantheon slightly.
Was it the No Host for Hate movement does not trust Pantheon?
no, they're
Yeah.
just so highly leveraged, debt leveraged. I think Pantheon owes almost $200 million, right?
Jesus.
And that's quite a bit of money, and they've owed that to their investors now for quite a long time. I think they got that over a period of 10 years. If you loan some startup $10 million for 10 years and they made no money, zero, not a fucking penny, you'd be like, so am I ever going to get my money out of here? Yeah, I love Amazy.io. Those are my new favorites, Nora. I hosted that nar.realtor site that you saw. That consolidated down from 16 internal servers to one box on Amazy. They tuned the shit out of it. Those guys are awesome. I love them.
Well, I know we're getting close to our normal time, but I do want to kind of wrap this up with just kind of a general thoughts
Oh, this is cool.
and then a segue. So obviously we're all part of this Drupal community, but I think it's important that we've kind of talked about as individuals, we have to diversify and be aware of how we can make it healthy for us
Mm-hmm.
as our individuals, as our companies, and then as the community, not just special interests. So I would love to kind of continue to explore that. I think right now there are a lot of people hurting in our tech community. So I want to just keep promoting everybody, keep supporting each other, find out ways to challenge the norm and also find out the newness. The kids are onto something for a reason. And I think, they can have the hits and we should be there supporting them and also being a part of that movement. I don't know Drupal's role, and I think that's something that we continue to explore here. But I would try to invite all of you to go into the Slack channel. I'd love to find out what should we talk about in our next meetup that's relevant for those purposes, for the health of our community and the health of the individuals in our community. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Remind me which we're talking on Drupal Slack.
Yeah, there's a Drupal Slack channel. It is called, and this is a mouthful, Pacific Time Virtual Drupal Users Group.
Dashes in between. Gotcha.
Dashes in between. So it's a long one. If we can rename it, that's great. But it's just to capture these virtual meetups. In the long run, it'd be great to do a summit or whatever. I just wanted to test it this way and see maybe a virtual summit eventually because I want to make these things accessible. I think that strikes at the heart of why we were all interested in this, socializing and solving tech problems.
Hmm.
So cool. Well, it was great seeing you all. Any parting thoughts from anybody before we broke up?
Just remember, everybody, the best ideas come from the community. They rise up. That's the way it works in Drupal. That's the way it's always worked. It's the way it works in open source. And I have a feeling we will survive this top-down initiative. I'm an open source guy, man. You're never going to get me to agree with somebody telling me what to do, right? But hey, if everybody likes what you do and they take it on, well, hell's bells. We're definitely onto something then, right? And when's the last time that happened in Drupal? Views. When's the last time something really flippin' cool happened in Drupal that changed everybody's mentality about what they could build? views.
Yeah.
Earl Miles, one guy,
Really good
Silicon
point.
Valley, in his bedroom, wrote that shit by himself because he was frustrated. And then people were like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing in the world. That right there is the true power of community. And so I tell people all the time, we own this software. It's my software. I put thousands of hours into it. It's not owned by anybody. It's owned by all of us. Right. So let's make it happen. Show some innovation, man. That's like, be innovative any way you can and talk about it. And that's the way we get our community better. And so I think that for topics on how you get people excited, like I like this. I like talking to some of these old school people here. Like I've known Ryan forever. I've known Mike forever. I've known Chad for a long time. It's like, it's cool because you guys know what we're talking about, right? And that's what community events brought, right? But the talk should be like, what are ideas that we can build as a community that will help everybody? Get back to the socialist roots, man. That's why we put Next Drupal out. I'll tell you, Next Drupal cost chapter 3 $600,000 fucking dollars to build. And we gave it away for free. Boom. Here, everybody, take that software for free and let's see what happens when we let the tempest out of the teapot. And look where we are. Starshot. That's exactly what happened. They're like, we can't go headless. We'll fucking lose all our money. We need to figure out a lamp stack solution. Starshot. But that would be my parting shot, man. Best ideas, community, make it rise. Make it rise for everybody. That's how we got to where we're at. Not by, everybody doing their own thing.
Thanks, John. Anybody else? Any parting thoughts?
John, I think you need to be on the marketing working group if you're not already.
They always want me to be, but I just don't. I can't do it. That group is run by committee. That's why the website and the colors and everything look the way it does, because it's run by committee. It's not run by community and passion, right? So they can't do it that way because it's run by committee. It's an organization. It's an association. It's like it's all this shit.
No. Okay, so you should just be like maybe an advisor, and you just come in there and just
I
say all
do
the
all the
things
time.
and get them to like,
I
shape them
do,
up.
but they don't listen to me. They don't listen to one word I say. Nothing.
Oh, come on.
They don't listen. I mean, I've told them 1,000 times that if you don't bring new members into our community, we're going to dry up and blow away. And their idea and response to that was Starshot. And I'm like, they're like, we're going to definitely bring in new people. I'm like, who?
People who like stars
and
astronomers
and shots. Like you don't need to be innovative on a platform that's like no code. Build your website anyway. How are you going to encourage somebody to be super innovative on that to change the world like Earl Miles did? It's going to be tough, right? So that's the part that I just want people to understand that. And I can't wait for DrupalCon because I'm going to preach this shit for 4 days to every person I come across and be like, listen, man, we make it happen. Nobody else, right? And if people love Starshot and they really want Starshot to happen, it should happen just naturally. Like a natural, I don't even know how to describe it. That's the way it should be. And if people are like dictating what you're doing and telling you what to do and you should do it this way or that's the best way to do it. Fuck, it's not going to work. Not in Drupal, maybe in WordPress. But look at what happened in WordPress. WordPress blew up too. So see you guys at DrupalCon, or is there another one of these next month where we can just shoot the shit like this?
Every month, every Wednesday. First Wednesday of the month. So if you have an idea for the next one, this one was Drupal CMS. Next one could be DrupalCon. That's an idea. What do you want to do? Yeah.
How to bring new members into our community.
You said this first or second Wednesday of the month?
It's the first. Today was the second Wednesday because there was a holiday.
New Year's.
I didn't want to conflict with New Year's. But yeah, the rest of them are up. If you are on the Slack, that's where I'm most active. Talking about this group. But there are some posts on LinkedIn. There's the events.drupal.org site has our group events on there as well.
And also, if you do meetup.com, our Portland Drupal users group, I have offered to let Chad use the Portland meetup.com because meetup.com has a really big reach and they have really good reminder like, hey, your meetup is starting in a few minutes. The one that you said you were going to go to. So
you didn't go to your meetup. We're going to change your password now until you give us $49.95.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, meetup Meetup is a little bit predatory, but we still get new people to show up to the events because of Meetup. So I
Chad, you
keep
should
giving
reach
them
out to
$100
me too,
every
because
year.
I have full control over the Bay Area, the SF Doug list. It's huge. It's
Nice.
massive. And Bay Area SF Doug died because it didn't go into this format very well. Right. So you may have an opportunity to capture some people off that list. Send me email, john@chapter3.com. What's this? Nora, you have
Luma
all
seems
these.
to be the meetup replacement that's kind of rising right now.
Yeah,
Oh,
we talked about that in the Vancouver group as an alternative because they didn't want to. I don't want to fund their Meetup account if they're not really using it much.
It's
Um,
and I love
completely
the idea
free
of
as
making
long
it
as
like
you're
a
not
West Coast group.
charging for, I'm sorry?
No, no, go ahead.
It's completely free as long as you're not charging for people to attend, like tickets.
I think we can build West Coast community back up, Chad, with this.
yeah,
Rather than making it so regional, like Vancouver user group, SF Doug user group, San Diego user group. It's too small and spread out now. Those
yeah.
groups cannot
Let's
sustain themselves.
let's
But
work
like,
together, John, and anybody
yeah,
else in here. I don't
I
own
love
this.
this idea
You know,
of like this Zoom chat thing. You know what I mean? And just making it like cool. You could have beers or whatever. It's a great idea. It really
And hey,
is.
these
And
these Zoom meetups are going to be really popular when the bird flu finally starts going around. So
that'll be on January 23rd.
ready for phase two.
yeah,
It's definitely happening,
we'll all be
man.
back
Having
home,
round
and
two.
Round
Dying in
two's coming.
tuberculosis.
well, I mean, round one never left, but
That's true. That's very true.
True,
It didn't
true
leave,
that.
We
Never
just
unfortunately.
left.
pretended that it left. Yeah. Well,
All
yeah.
right, well, cool shit, man. Chad, I'd love to help you. This is awesome. These are fun. We got some good people on here, so I
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, for sure. Well, I'll send you some information, John, and then we'll try to collaborate. But this goes for all of you. I mean, this doesn't happen without your participation and getting the word out about doing this thing. So let's start off this new year good with our community, and I'll see you on the Slacks and on the asynchronous communication.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Nice
All
seeing
right,
everybody. Great chat.
take
Good
care.
night.
yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone.